about, and in fact, Professor Sanyal has mentioned about McGinn's in her later, very at the finishing stage of her presentation about McGinn, and that's very interesting because McGinn has given a thought on the musicality of language, which kind of liberal hold on the debate, and which one obviously given by Sharrock, a perspective kind of third reading, and another is Mary McGinn has in her book elucidating the Tractarian, where she has given an example about musicality and musical score of the relation between music and musical score, where she has talked that there is a common element between the musical score and music that depicts where one is the projection of the other, and when we construct or when the composer constructs any kind of music, he constructs it on the basis of the determinate combination of pictorial elements, and those pictorial elements actually constitute the musical score. So it has definitely it definitely has a structure. The musical notes have a structure, and the constitutive elements of the structure that form a particular music. And if like ethics or metaphysics, music is treated as nonsense, then this nonsense is itself valuable because of the relation between music, the piece of music, and the musical score, which actually combine to form the music. And if it is nonsense in the true sense or meaningless, then musical scores cannot produce any kind of meaningful communication, and there will always be a gap between the audience and the composer or the singer, so to say. So, like picture and the pictorial form, the commonality between picture and pictorial form, similarly music and its score and its corresponding musical score have the common elements that make the score or musical notes which is depicted in the produced music. It's in the realization and performance of the music we can get hold of that. So through the articulation of musical score, McGinn has said that it derives a sense. So what was an apparent nonsense, it derives a sense through the articulation and through the combination between the musical score. So that is very in many ways Tractarian gives us different avenues of thought, and this entire debate between sense and nonsense, we could learn so many things today, Indrani. It was so beautiful to listen to you. So thank you so much for this presentation, and to the organizer also. Thank you. I just wanted to I just thought to add what Mary McGinn's point of view in this context.
That is interesting addition. Thanks for adding it.
Thank you, Didi.
Thank you, Purvayan. Yes, Samasri, please.
Yeah, I have only a very brief question to Professor Sanyal. That is, when you were talking about the facts in logical space, you were referring to the logical space as a container. The analogy was a container or a purse with coins. So I was just wondering, why should it be taken as a purse or a container? Because logical space, it has something to do with the logical constituents, or maybe the signs in the language which are arranged in a logical order, not the grammatical syntax, but a logical syntax. So why should this logical space be taken as a container? I was just wondering, can you just explain that, Didi?
No, yes, maybe my presentation was not so much clear. Actually, what I wanted to suggest that it may seem like that as if logical space is there to contain all those things.
Acha.
Because everything is in logical space. So is it like a box? Is it like a purse? That is what I wanted to say.
Oh, I thought maybe the signs itself, when arranged in a particular manner, it revealed a kind of logical relation, and that logical relation may be taken as a logical space. I had this kind of notion. I do not know whether I am right in interpreting that.
Actually, everything is in the object. Everything is in the object. It's all possibility of combinations are in the object, and all the possibilities taken together is logical space. Actually, ultimately, which one is primary in the calculators? The object or the logical space? That is also another important question, because logical space as such is contained in the object actually. It is nowhere outside the object.
Will it not be correct to say that logical space is contained in the language? I do not know in which sense, because you see, on the one hand there is language, and on the other hand there are objects. So the logical space, maybe it can be viewed from two different perspectives. One is from the perspective of object, or from the standpoint of object. There is space, logical space, there the concatenation of objects, and on the other you have the language. But I do not know whether we can say the other, because language and reality, they are together intertwined in such a manner that one cannot be separated from the other, I think. I do not know whether this kind of
And
understanding.
logical space is also there. Logical space doesn't exist outside. Actually, logical language and reality. And if we admit, say we are admitting reality, reality contains logical space. In it, everything is contained. In it contained all the actualities and all the possibilities.
And I
That is contained in the reality.
and
Nothing is outside there.
yeah, I had other no, Didi, you explain. Yes.
And in language, we have many words and we can construct many sentences. But we do not always using all the words, all the sentences. Maybe some words, some sentences are just contained in the language as possibility. These have not yet realized yet. And that possibility of expressibility of language, that can be matched with the logical space.
Thank you. I had another clarification, not a clarification. I think when you are talking about there is a provision of going beyond the limits of language, I think then only the idea of mystic and mysticism, it enters, because when you are talking about going beyond, so is it a kind of religious experience or mysticism? Can we say that in that from that point of view, we can say that there is something more, a kind of another liberal reading of Tractatus, when he's saying that there is a provision of going beyond, or going beyond the rungs of the ladder. So I do not know whether that will be the point of view of Wittgenstein, or another reading of Tractatus.
Actually, yes. Today I just wanted to emphasize upon intentionality of a language. That is in it something inherent, because expressibility of language contains in itself to go beyond itself. I didn't enter into the discussion of, say, mysticism, ethics, aesthetics, and other things. But at least if this much is allowed, then there is a provision for going beyond the limit. And if at least this is the minimal requirement, this minimal requirement has to be fulfilled. And then we have to decide whether maximum can also be fulfilled. That will be a matter of discussion for later. Because first we have to make provision for the minimal.
Thank you, Didi.
Anyone else would like to ask? Gautam, are you asking?
Yes, sir. Can I?
Okay, please.
Ma'am, good evening, ma'am. I have one question. You had mentioned that logic is restricted by the conditionality of the world. If you can. Logic is restricted by the conditionality of the world.
Yes.
If you can
Actually, everything has to be determined by the logical syntax. No. In order to determine sense and nonsense, in order to divide between sense and nonsense, that has to be decided by the logic. Now the problem is that logic is not one. We know that there are innumerable varieties of logic. So if my logic differs from your logic, the conditions that will be required to be fulfilled by your logical syntax will be different from my logical syntax. So logical syntax that determines the conditionality of the logic, and that, so here Wittgenstein is guided by the Russellian logic, two-valued truth functional logic that he has taken as a model. But by this time we know that this is not the only logic. Logic has flourished in so many ways and in so many avenues. So if I begin with another logic, that's result, the condition of that logic will provide different result. So here logic, it is determined by logic, but the question is by which logic? Actually, have we been able to arrive at any such universal logic? That is another question. Here Wittgenstein's question is that actually what I feel that Wittgenstein was trying to find that kind of language. That language will give clarity, precision, and so he will be able to avoid all the paradoxes of philosophy, philosophical problems, puzzles. And so he just, I think that he proceeded with the logic that was available to him, and he tried to show that logic determines the word. That is, logic is the language. That language determines the range of the word. This is the lesson. Not that it has to be that particular logic. Actually, Wittgenstein, in fact, may not have tried to establish that that is the ideal logic, that truth functional two-valued logic is the ideal logic. It was just an experimentation that if we work with a particular logic, which is my language, my expressibility will be determined by that logic. This is what he wanted to say. And accordingly, what will be admitted will depend on the conditionality of that language. I cannot go beyond that language. I will have to obey the syntax of that language. So the syntax will bind me. What will be sensical and what will be nonsensical. But if my awareness, if there is, the problem is that if there can be some channel of my being aware. Maybe not in the strict sense of, say, knowledge or something. And by that awareness, something comes to me. What can I do? Will I say all these things are rubbish? Will I throw them away? And all these will drive us to the domain of mysticism and other things. Because what is mysticism? Because I cannot explain it by my tool that are available to me. By using that tool, I am not able to give any voice to that. No, I think so. This is my feeling. It is absolutely my feeling. This is how I feel. Because consciousness is there. No. All the roaring, rattling, all these are there. I can hear. But I cannot call it my knowing, knowledge. But this is there. That means consciousness is there. What to do?
Anyone else? Yes, I mean, I'll just have a brief clarification on that, on particularly the concept of mystic, and that is what you associated with silence. And later on, you also referred to Tolstoy's gospel.
Gospel of belief. No.
So Wittgenstein certainly had a kind of a vision of life, which is not just been confined to the idea of the logical. So he was trying to possibly see life beyond the notion of expressibility. I mean, because that is how he's trying to conclude, referring to silence. Otherwise, I see in that sense. So that there is a kind of a spiritual element which he was constantly seeking throughout his life, and try to understand the life issues, the issues concerning life and the values, etc. So I think there are many other authors who have tried to elucidate this idea of mysticism, not mysticism, but a mystic way of looking at life. So maybe that is kind of possibility.
Yes, that is really another very important aspect. In fact, nowadays I feel that in order to understand any philosophers of the stature Wittgenstein, or side by side when I try to understand Sri Aurobindo, I find we will have to follow some other methodology as well. That is not just by reading their text, not just by analyzing what they have written in their text. That is very much important. That we will definitely have to do. But also we have to deal with biographical approach, that is biographical method. Because otherwise, a philosopher actually is not just that kind of a figure of logic. It is something else. No. So what actually he was or he wanted to do, what are the things he aspired after, this also we need to take into consideration. So that side by side we will have to read texts. Of course we will have to read texts. We have to read commentaries on the texts. but also we have to read things which are not generally included in our philosophy course. That reading their memoirs, their letters, their biographies, autobiographies, these are also, I think, very, very important. This is what I feel. Maybe
Because he was, in one of the
effect of being old. Because
no, one of the diary entries, the war diary entries many people have referred to. He was a man with gospel. He was always carrying that gospel with him. And particularly, I think the war and the challenges that he was encountering there, that changed the life. I mean, so that is how the notebooks entries has significance.
these are really very, very important.
Yeah.
I think these are really.
Didi, you have raised a very important point, and Gary Hadberg actually has written a very thought-provoking book named "Describing Ourselves: Wittgenstein on Autobiographical Consciousness." This how we read biographies and autobiographies, and how the entire consciousness changes. And that's where Wittgenstein's work, along with Dostoevsky's Notes from the Underground, those works, how they actually display the nuances of their thoughts, that also need to be taken care of. Very important point you have raised.
So if there is no question, then we would like to conclude this talk today.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
So thank you. Many thanks to.
We have actually, okay, please.
On behalf of, sir, should I?
Please carry on. I mean,
Yes, sir. So, on behalf of the forum, I express our sincere gratitude to Professor Sanyal for this insightful and interesting lecture. I would also like to thank our chairperson, Professor Pradhan, for his comments. And I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Ranjan sir for organizing this series. It has been a great learning experience for all of us. And thank you everyone for joining. Thank you.
So thank you very much. Thank you,
Yes.
Professor.
I would also like to express my thanks to Ranjan Kumar Panda, to Professor Pradhan, and also to Forum for Philosophy, and also to my colleagues present here. Thanks to Purbayon, to Shamosri, I see, Jareshwar, I see here, and Gautam. I am not acquainted with Gautam, but I thank Gautam also for raising questions. So to everybody, to Uday Kumar as well.
thank
It
you.
was a nice meeting and nice conversation on Wittgenstein's Tractators.
We will have a small announcement. We will have a second on 2nd July. There is this book discussion by this book is by Priyamada Sarkar, Language Limits and Beyond. So early Wittgenstein and Rabindranath Tagore. So Professor Sanyal will be chairing the session. So I just would like thought of informing everyone. We will circulate the poster very soon.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you,
very
sir.
much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Didi.
Yeah.